Hello again. Okay, so far in this class you have picked a topic, turned that topic into a problem that faces some stakeholder in the issue, researched that problem, developed some of the details, and now you have to begin to research how to solve the problem. So this talk is about coming to solutions and how one goes about doing that. If problem solving is the process of identifying a problem, prioritizing and selecting alternatives for a solution, and evaluating outcomes, you've done the identifying and researching the problem. Now you need to begin selecting alternatives for a solution and evaluating the possible consequences of those solutions in order to prioritize them. And so I want to talk a little bit about the ways that we do that. We're going to look at three different things. The first one is, how to generate ideas towards solutions. The second thing is what kinds of considerations do you have to take into account as you generate those ideas, as you prioritize through those ideas. And then finally, what kind of structure should the chapter take in order to get those ideas down on paper in such a way that they're valuable to your client. So let me start with brainstorming or idea generation. I'm actually going to do another short talk on that, and there's a little worksheet handout to go with it that I developed last year along with some students and with some people who are supposedly experts on idea generation. But here I just want to suggest that there are sort of three main ways in which people generate ideas for solutions to policy problems. The first is the synthetic model. The synthetic model takes examples of proposed solutions that have been tried in the past and looks at sort of what's worked and what hasn't worked with each of those and tries to come up with a synthetic model that draws on the things that worked from each of the previous models, but avoids the things that didn't work. So it's a synthesis of other approaches that either have been tried out or haven't been tried out, but have been analyzed and have certain kinds of things that would make them successful and certain kinds of flaws. And so you're trying to develop an alternative that has most of the successes and few or none of the flaws. The second is to look around for external precedent. What can we find that's been done elsewhere in the world that has worked? And how could we modify that to work here? We've had some real successes with that. We had a UN advisor in here one time as a consultant, and he used that model very effectively. He had the most astonishing knowledge about the history of UN actions in Africa, and he was actually able to draw on those to make recommendations for ways that the U.S. could proceed in Afghanistan or in other parts of the Middle East. The third common way that people generate ideas for policy analysis is the most uncommon, which is thinking outside the box and trying to come up with unusual ways to resolve a problem, the kinds of things that most people don't think about. So it's looking around and coming up with things that have not been tried in the past, and then thinking through, what kinds of successes, what kinds of odds of success, or what kinds of unintended consequences might these ideas have. One place where outside-the-box thinking has been very successful in recent years has been in the creation of micro-solutions. That is, attempting to solve problems, sometimes even very large-scale problems, by implementing small-scale solutions, particularly solutions that are grassroots, bottom-up solutions, rather than the classic top-down solutions imposed by an external agency or by the government of the country that's being in which the problem takes place. So, for example, four of these types of micro-solutions that I've talked about before in my classes are leveraging inequalities, the use of appropriate technologies, the use of social entrepreneurship, and the use of microfinance. And these are not separate solutions. They can actually be used in combination with one another as well. Leveraging inequalities means taking advantage of the fact that people in the core have access to enormous resources that people in the periphery, where many of the problems that we're addressing occur, don't have these resources. So there are two fundamental principles to the notion of leveraging inequalities. The first is that global inequalities in the distribution of wealth means that a middle-class Canadian or American or Western European citizen has access to resources that are undreamed of by most people in the world's poorest countries. In addition to the fact that money buys more in poorer countries than in wealthy ones, so that if you want to drill a well in the U.S., it will cost more than 5 times what it does in rural Africa. People in developed countries also enjoy advantages of infrastructure. They have access to media outlets, access to educational opportunities. They own automobiles. They have good roads. They have frequent flyer miles, which incidentally can be donated. They have personal computers, reliable telephone service, leisure time. All kinds of things that can serve as multipliers to make the work of philanthropic organizations easier and more effective. So one of the things that you can do is try to find ways that allow you to create philanthropy in the West that will enable people in the South. A classic example, we had a speaker here at Miami who was a young man who, when he was 14 years old, in Malawi, while the country was suffering from a famine, figured out how to build a windmill out of discarded engine components and PVC pipe and bicycle parts, with which he provided free electricity to his family's home. He then met someone who brought him into the TED Talk universe, and teaming up with philanthropists and entrepreneurs through his TED Talk, people both in Africa and the developed world, he began working toward developing small windmills that could be used in his village and elsewhere in Malawi. So the point is, he's taking advantage of the fact that he's developed something that can require relatively small investments from international sponsors that can have enormous impacts on the ground where he is. That notion also brings us to the next one, which is appropriate technologies. Many philanthropic projects seek to improve technological access in communities with underdeveloped infrastructures, but they often try to replicate first world solutions in third world contexts. So like the One Laptop Per Child Trade Association, which is a US-based nonprofit organization created by faculty members at MIT's Media Lab, have been seeking to design and manufacture and distribute a $100 laptop so that every child in the world can have one. But artifacts like laptops assume that you have other aspects of infrastructure, like dust-free houses and reliable current and working telephone lines, which may not in fact be available. And what's more, for the billion people or so in the globe who live on $1 a day, even a $100 laptop can be hopelessly out of reach. So an alternative is to give people access to technologies that aren't used in the West, but could be, and find ways to use these in countries where they would be useful. So, for example, in the Philippines, in a squatter community of thousands and thousands of people, built of brick houses with tin roofs, a man named Ilac Diaz filled soda bottles with water and a drop of bleach to keep anything from growing inside them, and then seals them and installs them on the rooftops, which allows the sun's rays to shine through the water with the brightness of a 60-watt light bulb at the height of the day. So these solar bottle bulbs, bicycle-powered water pumps, self-contained solar-powered objects like street lights, coal made from sugarcane and corn cobs, clay pot food preservers, other kinds of inexpensive devices that we wouldn't use in the West because we have alternative solutions that are better given our infrastructure, but would work in the infrastructures of the countries we're trying to help. Another kind of micro solution involves social entrepreneurship, the use of entrepreneurial principles to create and organize and manage ventures that are designed to produce social change. Social entrepreneurship is understood to involve innovative, risky, solution-oriented activities that can further social and environmental goals rather than just profit-making goals. Advocates hold it up as a counter to the principles that get in the way of typical government and NGO-run projects, where you have political cycles affect them, there's a demand for instant results, there's a desire to minimize risk and avoid blame, whereas in entrepreneurial systems, these things don't necessarily get in the way. Most social entrepreneurship starts with building relationships in local communities, identifying innovative and energetic individuals who can be provided with the means to establish sustainable social projects, and then these ventures are operated by committed and capable teams who have vested interest in the outcomes because they are members of the community and because there are rewards and incentives built into the project if measurable performances can be found. Projects using social entrepreneurship and appropriate technologies are often funded through NGOs and philanthropies, but they're also often funded through microfinancing. And this involves providing small-scale financial services, including loans and saving accounts and fund transfers and insurance, to low-income clients or groups who, traditionally lack access to banking services. Microfinancing is intended to be sustainable by turning a small profit on its investments. Now, historically, we've seen that microfinance can fail spectacularly, but it's also had a large number of successes, and the success seems to depend heavily on whether or not lending institutions are rooted in the communities in which they provide the services.